Putin was banking on NATO being split. NATO has never been more united than it is today. Putin is getting exactly the opposite what he intended to have as a consequence of going into Ukraine.
President Biden at an emergency NATO summit trying to ratchet up pressure on Vladimir Putin. Biden and allies announcing more sanctions against Russia, but the president losing his temper when pressed if he could have done more to prevent this war.
What makes you think Vladimir Putin will alter course based on the action you've taken today?
Let's get something straight. You remember, if you covered me from the very beginning, I did not say that, in fact, the sanctions would deter him. Sanctions never deter. You keep talking about that. Sanctions never deter. The maintenance of sanctions, the increasing the pain.
You believe the actions today will have an impact on making Russia change course in Ukraine?
That's not what I said. You're playing a game with me. I know. The answer is no. We have to demonstrate. The reason I asked for the meeting, we have to stay fully, totally, thoroughly united.
Somebody did not get their pudding. As for the fighting, Ukraine says it blew up a Russian ship and is slowly pushing back Russian forces around Kiev. President Biden appearing to draw a red line on what it would take for the U.S. and NATO to directly respond to Russia.
I can't answer that. I'm not going to give you intelligence data, number one. Number two, we would respond. We would respond if he uses it. The nature of the response would depend on the nature of the use.
So, Judge, I go to you first. What does Dana think about the presser?
Dana has been on television all day, and she's been wonderful. I think you should go to Dana right away and then come back to me. If she didn't cover what she covered earlier, I'll fill it in.
You know, you said something today that I was like nodding in agreement because I was like, why did he answer that question about 2024?
Yep.
And then the second part, which was that he lied. I mean, he brought up that Fine People hoax, which has been debunked over and over. Then he says that police officers died on January 6th. No. But anyway. He was okay, and then
so it was weird. So he goes all the way over there for this emergency meeting. I think it's good that the president went. I think it's good that they have this unity. He said that NATO is so unified, and we all get it, Mr. President. We don't need to hear that again unless something happens. Then he only takes like 4 or 5 questions, and then he goes to Der Spiegel. Now, most of you probably don't read Der Spiegel. You're familiar with Der Spiegel, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is not necessarily...
The German Beagle.
The German paper. They're very thorough. They seem to be very interested in American politics.
Yes.
And in one direction.
Right.
So he takes the question, and the question is about, will you run in 2024? Now, you could say, look, I'm here talking about this. 2024 is a long way off. I've already said I'm going to run again. Like, let's talk about something else. Instead, he said, you know, I really had to run. And then he had to go back over and retread through all of that ground.
Right.
I just wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it. I would have said, use that opportunity if you have the time. Take one more question on the relevant points. I would not have done that on foreign soil, but he did. Okay, fine. I also thought that you have all of these reporters. They are completely invested. They actually, I think the coverage of the Biden administration in terms of what they are doing has been pretty good. But his messaging, their messaging is so timid. And you are sort of left wanting, what is the mission? What are we doing? What do we want to have happen? What is the end goal? Did you guys discuss that? There's all these things that maybe we'll learn in the coming days that in the closed-door meetings, they had these discussions. But if I were Zelensky, I would have watched that press conference. It's like, okay, do you want me to give the press conference? Because he could have answered it a little bit better.
And I think,
how'd I do?
Okay. You did a great job. But you know what? One of the rules of Dana Perino's visit to foreign countries is you go there with the intent of announcing something, of delivering something. What did he say that was different? In fact, what he said was so similar to what he said before. He basically said, you know, we're going to respond to chemical weapons depending upon how much they use. I mean, it was just this kind of vapid, vacuous, we didn't know what he was talking about. It wasn't like the Ronald Reagan, here's what we got to do. We win, they lose. Or how about this? Ukraine wins, they lose. But at this point, it's clear that Ukraine is in a position of getting Russia. Russia's stumped right now. They're embarrassed in front of the world. They hit apparently a Russian ship in the sea that's right below Kherson. So the question is, how are we going to do this so that Russia backs off? Or is Zelensky going to be forced into the idea that, look, just give Russia what they already have and let bygones be bygones? No. Ukraine in '94 was told, if you give up your nukes, we'll take care of you, we'll protect you. And they never did it. And now Zelensky's saying, I don't want to be a part of NATO. All I want is I want to be a part of a group, the United States, the Ukraine, United States, the UK, where I'm protected, some kind of a treaty where I'm protected. That's all I want. And at this point, what we've got to figure out is this guy's probably going to win this. I think Zelensky can, depending upon what we're giving him. And we've got to make a statement to Putin that, you know, you're out. We've got to fight you more than, you know, depending upon what you do, we'll do something.
Jesse, I want to play some sound on tape. We call that SOT in the TV business. It's of Admiral John Kirby talking about how Russians aren't communicating with our administration. Roll that.
We have tried on numerous occasions to connect Secretary Austin with his counterpart. Chairman Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has also tried to connect with his counterpart. We've made multiple attempts here, but they have not answered up. They've declined to take these calls.
You know, Jesse, I'd like to quote right-winger Trevor Noah. This would never happen under Trump, right? They answer his calls. Does this matter? Because do we need to talk to that side? Do we know? Are we getting our information from somewhere else?
There's nothing more humiliating when the phone call goes straight to voicemail. Whether you're a guy calling a girl, whether you're someone that's in sales. If someone doesn't pick up your call, that is really, really bad. So, yes, that's a problem. You know when you do an interview, Greg, and then after the interview's over, you think, oh, God, why did I say it like that? That's how Biden must be thinking. They asked him, and this is where presidents really get their chance to make a huge statement. If Russia launches a chemical attack, what will the U.S. response be? These are the kind of moments that are made for presidential politics. You're in Brussels. There's a war. Russia is about to do something. And Biden mumbles something about, you know, we'll do something. Joe Biden, speak. That was your moment to shine in Europe, to say something that makes everybody proud and be clear. And then they said, oh, you know, well, if Zelensky wants to negotiate some territorial, and he goes, you know what? If Zelensky wants to let the Russians have the East, that's up to Zelensky. I mean, what kind of answer is that? You're supposed to say, no, you're supposed to have a little backbone there. And then he leaves the press conference after a minute or two, and everyone starts screaming at him. And he goes, okay, one more question. And then he loses his temper. And he said, oh, the sanctions were never a deterrent. I never said that. Well, everybody else in your administration said it. Kamala, Sullivan, Kirby, they all said it. So they're not on the same page with that. And then he keeps saying the same thing. NATO's unified. Oh. Well, so what if NATO's unified if Ukraine's getting swallowed up whole? You could have no Ukraine, but as long as NATO's unified, great. Zelensky can be dead. NATO's unified. So what? This is embarrassing, especially the way he was walking. Did you see how they were guiding him like an usher takes a person to their seat when the lights start blinking before intermission? Like, this is the president of the United States. Come on. And then he says, well, there could be some famine. And like, we all know there's a recession coming, and now we're talking about nuclear weapons. There's no urgency. There is no urgency to stop this war. He's like, oh, we'll do a couple more sanctions. We'll sanction this guy. We'll sanction that guy. Come on. This is much, much more intense than he's letting on.
Yeah, you know, Jessica, in the green room, you were saying how embarrassed you were to be an American under Joe Biden, and I agreed with you. I'm kidding, and I'm glad that we coordinated today. Care to respond to Jesse? Could you argue that Biden is trying to portray a sense of calm as opposed to urgency? Maybe that's his strategy. I don't know.
I could argue that. I could also argue that Jesse's perception of that press conference was not in sync whatsoever with how I was viewing the press conference, or I think a lot of Americans were, and frankly, people all over the world. Because Biden did have real deliverables. He said, first of all, out loud, I want Russia out of the G20. That's a big deal. When you say Russia should be out, that's kicking them out. We have $1 billion in new humanitarian aid. We're taking 100,000 refugees. Apparently, I brought that up yesterday because we've only taken 11 thus far. 100,000 is still not enough, but it's at least clear that they know that this is a problem. There's another 320 million for what they're calling societal resilience, to make sure that the media can keep functioning, that we're supporting LGBTQ people in Ukraine, et cetera. Those feel like real deliverables to me. And And
Wait.
Except for not ending the war.
Jessica.
What we're going to end the war? And on the chemical weapons front, I do think that is a big moment, because if you think back to one of the biggest foreign policy blunders of the Obama administration, it was the Syrian red line, right? And now Biden's getting his own red line, and he should delineate exactly what that is. And I understand there has to be a commensurate response depending on what he does, but I would like to see, and I'm sure Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, would be fully enthusiastic about, the line actually can be really, really small. Whatever they do, if there's a chemical weapon on the ground in Ukraine, we will respond to the fullest extent of what NATO can do. But I know you want to disagree with me about something.
What did he say about chemical response? What did he say? Do you remember? I don't remember what he said.
There will be a response, and it'll be proportionate.
Gobbledygook, Jessica. It was gobbledygook.
The nature of our response depends on the nature of use. And the other thing that he said was they're going to give chemical defense gear. Chemical defense gear. Everything is defense. None of it is offense. And by the way, how can you refer to the red line in Syria under Obama and Biden? I mean, that was a joke.
I literally said foreign policy blunder.
I mean, what
out loud
what Biden could have said to that question about chemical weapons is he should have said, he better not. And leave it at that. Because that was also one of the things. It's like, don't say all the things that you're going to do.
Exactly. All right. Coming up, liberal leaders throwing in the towel when it comes to dealing with the surge in violent crime.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.